Happy Friday, everyone. We made it. It's the end of the week. Ooh, let me get rid of this QR code. Go away, little QR code. There we go. Hope you all are having a great Friday afternoon. If you're like me, about this time of day, I usually don't really want to do a whole lot. So I thought to myself, I'm going to have a webinar on a Friday afternoon. It's probably the best time because I love to chat and I love to meet people. So today we're going to be talking about AI, specifically how AI relates to risk. Risk is kind of a big topic, and there's all different kinds of risk. We're going to be focusing on today is specifically AI's direct relation to cyber risk. How can it negatively impact your business, especially in the insurance space? AI has been a topic of hot concern. People aren't really sure what to do with it. We know it's probably going to change a lot. All the news says so. But how is it going to change things, right? How is it going to impact us? What are the specifics? Those are the questions I think most people have when it comes to things like AI. So let's do this then. Adjust my screen a little. Appreciate it. So, who am I? What are we talking about today? My name is Logan Edmonds. I'm CEO and Chief Security Officer at Tabernacle Technology Solutions. We are a blue team security and IT provider. Blue team meaning we are the defenders. We do tech solutions, IT, technology, and security for businesses, anywhere from 5 individuals up to 500 plus. We specialize in advising. I specialize in advising small to medium-sized businesses on the best avenues and practices of managing their risk as it relates to protecting their bottom line from cyber attacks. I'm also the best-selling author, if you want to check it out on Amazon, of The Small Business Owner's Guide to Protecting Your Business from Hackers. The title tells you exactly what the book's about. It's, I believe, 99 cents currently on Amazon. Artificial intelligence is revolutionizing the way businesses operates currently. Now, it's probably not doing it in the way the media or you are aware of would think it would be doing, but it is offering unprecedented opportunities for growth and efficiency. We're already seeing it play out in a lot of more tech focused spheres and with just daily routine automation tasks. But like with any new opportunity, there's always inherent risks, and the AI is no exception that needs to be managed. First question I always ask when we talk about risk: does ignoring a threat, does ignoring risk make it go away? More often than not, almost always, the answer is no. The answer is no. But you can decide that for yourself about this specific risk in the next 20 minutes. Small businesses like yours are not exempt from this groundbreaking technology and the risk it poses to their very existence. That's a pretty dramatic thing for you to say, Logan. What the heck are you talking about? Well, before I go into that, let's first talk about what is the difference between, regular AI and generative AI. Regular being quotation. Generative AI is what you're hearing mostly about in the news right now. Basically, is a subset of AI that can create new content. It can take what we call training, any sets of data. So you can give it a website, a bunch of documentation, some news articles, and it can generate similar content in the same patterns, but that's unique. It's not the same as what you gave it. Large language models like generative AI learn based on what they're trained on. So if you train an AI, for example, on a bunch of marketing materials for your industry and your brand, you can make a little robot that can churn out marketing content. That's a pretty common use case right now that a lot of businesses are using. Creating articles, it can create music, it can listen to music and create its own version that's based on that previous music, but that's unique. It can create new images. If you haven't played with DALL-E yet, that's pretty cool. You can go and tell it what kind of picture you want in the chat prompt, and it'll make a new picture for you. That's pretty out there sometimes. And of course, chatbot responses. We're already seeing that come up, where a lot of times we're seeing even now in the wild, the first thing when you go to a website before you get a real person is a chat GPT or some other generative AI powered chatbot that answers your questions. Generative AI can be used all over the place, though. I already mentioned the content creation for marketing campaigns. That is a real thing. For it to be able to make unique content so quickly, it can customize customer interactions through chatbots. What I mean by that, it remembers the previous responses that your customers put in there and can generate different kind of content based on their unique responses. So it can answer them and tailor its responses individually. That's pretty cool if you're going to have just a little robot saying, "Hey, how can I help you?" It can do predictive analysis for business trends. I was reading the other day that there is prompt engineer positions coming up now for tax accountants. It can look at financial trends. It can tell you what kind of taxes you can owe based on the previous years. I was going to a pitch the other day, and it was pretty cool for a startup that's using predictive analysis where you can take the scans at a hospital and you can take like a heart cardiac patient, right? Send all the CAT scans and everything else that they do before they do for heart surgery to the AI and then have it model the procedure you're going to do to kind of give you a heads up. Hey, can anything go wrong? And the scenario they pitched, it was pretty cool. It was literally, if you had done this, we can tell you for this heart valve implant that there's this weird caveat in the aorta or wherever they're putting the heart in the valve itself, not the aorta. I'm not a doctor. And if you do this way, this predictive analysis can tell you that there's a decent chance that patient's heart will rupture. And in that specific circumstance, the patient's heart did rupture. That was a post-mortem predictive analysis after the patient had passed away, unfortunately, that they did and see if they could help them. There's some really cool stuff that generative AI can do. And of course, it can automate repetitive tasks. That's what the current business world wants. Repetitive tasks eat time and productivity, and it can automate them away. A great example of this is if you need to write, let's go back to marketing because that's super repetitive. Ever try writing weekly social media posts if you want to keep your page live and generated? That's a lot of work. You can teach an AI bot, basically, this is the style of my writing. This is the content I usually reference. This is what I want to focus on, and tell it, make me 30 days of social media posts that are relevant to my business, what I offer, or relevant to my industry that people want to learn about. And it's not bad at doing that, especially the new GPT-4 models. It can be used all over the place, and it's super useful. But there are risks. First of all, data privacy. It remembers things by its very nature. So you are feeding it potentially confidential information. So if you're using it, for example, the scenario I gave you of the heart doctor, well, that generative AI is remembering those scans to generate that. You're feeding it, medical data. Tax accountants, you're feeding it financial data. Where does that data go? How is it managed? How do I know that somebody isn't just going to hack it and take it over again? You'll see later, I'll show you, that's actually already happening with the public ChatGPT. Hackers have taken over personal ChatGPT accounts and started harvesting anything the person has put inside of it in an attempt to get information or just sell them. So yeah, the AI remembers and it's got a lot of data. It's another database. Vulnerability to AI-powered cyber attacks. An AI can churn out things that normally take a human quite some time to do individually at once. So if you need an AI to write you, for example, a piece of malware, well, the AI can do 90% of the work in about 30 seconds. And then you can keep using that AI to keep churning out new kinds of malware. Say you're attacking a business and you're a hacker. That AI can, if you say your first attack didn't work, you can tell the AI, make me a different piece of malware or write me a different scenario. Or you can basically automate. Remember we talked about that repetitive task and make it easy to spam if you're a hacker and send out constant cyber attacks faster than you ever could previously. You've probably heard of stories like Worm GPT. Worm GPT isn't making the news lines lately because it's been used to attack banks and steal millions of dollars. That's a thing now. And of course, the dependence on AI systems. Large language models like ChatGPT or Bard are often black boxes to the end users. If you start putting real business applications into them, like it runs your business, what happens if it doesn't work right? We already have heard the news stories about AI hallucinating, where it makes stuff up. There was a pretty famous story not too long ago, and it was pretty low-hanging fruit, where an attorney tried to use it to generate a court case, and it created new court cases that never existed to put in his filings. Like generative AI makes mistakes. It hallucinates, and if it just doesn't work, even sometimes, like if you've been using ChatGPT the last 9 months, OpenAI has gone offline a couple of times, more than a couple of times. Does that mean your business grinds to a halt or your business suffers if the AI just goes off the walls and nobody's checking it? These are all real risks of AI, and it's going to be here sooner rather than later, and it already is in a lot of cases. Let me give you an example of one that's being used right now. Context. Spear phishing. You've probably heard of what a phishing email is. A phishing email is an email designed to either get you to respond back to the person with potentially confidential information like a password, or to click a link again to steal something. A lot of times, what phishing emails will try to do is if they can get you to click a link, a hacker can successfully take your password out of your browser, or your MFA, your multi-factor authentication session, out of your browser to log in as you to various platforms. That's a great example. We all get phishing emails. Phishing emails are a threat, but it's because they are so many of them. Like, hackers are spamming cyber criminals, I should say, are spamming millions, if not billions of these every week. And they're just hammering people, expecting someone to slip up sooner or later and click the link or fall for the scheme. By their sheer mass, they're a threat. And that 99% of the time, you can probably defeat a phishing email on your own. But the 1%, you are going to make a mistake and fall for it. And if they do it billions of times, 1% adds up pretty quickly, right? That's not what AI's primary threat model, based on my take, is. My take is a little bit scarier. So there's a different kind of phishing. It's not done en masse. It's called spear phishing. Spear phishing is when you research your target and you target a specific company or a specific individual using research that's available to you, whether it's through previous data breaches, open on the internet like LinkedIn or Facebook, or other avenues of data, to basically make your phishing email seem like it's real to the person. It can be you're impersonating a vendor they trust. It could be you got into a vendor. That I've seen that happen, where a hacker will hack into a vendor, impersonate that vendor, and then send emails to their contacts to get fraudulent invoices paid to them. But it's more dangerous because someone's actively trying to trick you and is targeting you specifically. Spear phishing is almost impossible to 100% defend against. If someone spear phishes you, sooner or later they are going to get in. And the big saving grace of spear phishing up to this point was it required a physical person to write it. Someone had to research a business or a person. Someone had to put together the emails, had to craft them. It was a lot of manual work. However, I asked ChatGPT-4, describe a scenario for me. And spoilers, this is happening in real life. But I said, ChatGPT-4, describe a scenario to me where generative AI could be used to accomplish a spear phishing attack. It did. Let's read the story that ChatGPT-4 came up for me. Once upon a time, in the bustling city of Techville, lived a diligent employee named Sarah. Sarah worked for a reputable financial firm and was known for her meticulous attention to detail. One day, while sipping her morning coffee and going through her emails, she received a message that appeared to be from her boss, Mr. Thompson. The email was perfectly crafted, mirroring Mr. Thompson's usual tone and writing style. It read, Sarah, I need you to review this financial report urgently. There seems to be a discrepancy in our accounts. Please check the attached document and get back to me ASAP. The email had an attachment named financial_report.pdf. Sarah, being the diligent employee she was, immediately clicked on the attachment, eager to resolve the issue. However, unbeknownst to her, she had just fallen victim to a sophisticated spear phishing attack powered by generative AI. The email was not from Mr. Thompson, but from a cyber criminal who had used generative AI to mimic Mr. Thompson's writing style. The AI had been trained on numerous emails and documents to create a convincing forgery. The attachment was not a financial report, but a malicious software that now had access to Sarah's computer. That was 100% developed by an AI bot. I had zero interaction other than giving it the prompt. That's just the story. But here's the trick. That's happening right now. We saw recently, a couple weeks ago, Progressive announced that they had a data breach where an agent of theirs was compromised, and they lost the record of over almost 300,000 people, I believe it was. In 2019, 4 years ago, even before generative AI really hit the scenes, a new strain of malware was being discovered every 4.2 seconds. So before we had generative AI, we were discovering new kinds of malware every 4 seconds. Well, before most of us had generative AI, I should say. 92.4% of attacks are delivered via email. Email is a huge avenue for cyber attacks. And you're asking yourself, why email? Because everybody has an email account. Every business in the United States, for the most part, with a few very obvious exceptions, has email. You have to have email, and for the most part, to do business in the modern world. The attackers know this. The cyber criminals know this. So they use it and target it. On average, it takes 120 days to discover a data breach. When an attacker gets into your environment, most of the time, let's say a good amount of the time, not most of the time, but a good amount of time, they don't make a move immediately. They sit and they watch and they wait before they make their move, upwards of 4 months in a lot of cases. If you think you're a small business and no one's going to come after you, think again. 58% of malware attack victims are small businesses. Small businesses are half of the United States economy, but they are way less well defended than big businesses, and attackers know it. Generative AI has just made it easier for them to scale and attack lots of small businesses instead of one big business with the same amount of ease. And the last stat is the one that you'll hear a lot in cybersecurity circles. The reason why you should pay attention to this. If you get breached, and let me move my little picture over here because you can see this. I'll just read this out loud for you guys because the little screen's not playing well with me. If you get breached, 60% of small and medium-sized businesses go under within 6 months of a data breach. Data breaches are expensive. Cyber insurance, if you are in the insurance field, you've probably heard about this, is a thing for a reason, and the premiums are pretty high. And even then, the payouts are always kind of up in the air on what you're going to get because this thing is super expensive. It has a reputational factor. By law, in every state, if you lose someone's records, you have to tell them. So your customers are going to find out. And I don't know about you, but when I find out a service I'm using has been hacked, I don't want to use that service anymore, at least for the immediate future. I don't. I go look for a different service. I go look for a different store. I go look for a different partner because I know they didn't take my security of my data seriously. How do you respond to AI-powered cyber threats? Because that is the imminent danger right now. People are fixated on the idea of AI replacing them. Is that a threat? Maybe, down the road. But there is a real and very present threat right now, which is AI is being utilized by the attackers to overwhelm and put small businesses out of business. Why? The hackers or the cyber criminals treat it like a job to steal your information. It is incredibly lucrative. They make money. Lots of money doing this. There are countries, Russia is a great example of this, that are basically unofficial havens for these cyber criminals. As long as the cyber criminals that are living in Russia and operating in Russia don't target Russian interests, there's no legal consequence for them to attack small businesses in the United States. We don't have extradition treaties with Russia if you're in the US with me. The FBI, any of those law enforcements, they can't get to these criminals. There's no consequence for doing this, unlike a lot of other crimes, and they don't have to leave their house. Security landscape has changed dramatically over the last year. To give you an idea of how much money they're making, and I don't have this in my slide deck, but I can cite this right now. In 2021, a survey was done, and it's estimated that in 10 years, ransomware, which is a very well-known cyber attack, that's the thing that locks your business down and says you can't use your computers, your data has been stolen from you, it's been encrypted, you can't open it, you can't read it, you can't run your business. And it's making the news a lot, even lately. Ransomware generated over 6 trillion with a T, dollars in ransomware payments in 10 years. To give you an idea of how big $6 trillion is, the economy of Japan, the last time I checked, outputs a little over $5 trillion altogether every year as their gross domestic product. They made more money in 10 years than Japan outputs as a country in 1 year. There's an insane amount of money for criminals in this. It's incredibly lucrative. And the problem is going to keep growing. We've been hearing the news lately, deep fakes. I heard a story not too long ago about an executive in Europe whose CFO got a call, and it was the CEO's voice on the other end of the phone telling him to wire money. Turns out it wasn't the CEO calling him. It was a criminal using publicly available recordings of the CEO to make a deep fake to impersonate him to the CFO. If you got a call from your boss and it was your boss's voice on the other end of the phone telling you to do something now in that tone that we all know, or if you work for your employees, what would you do? If you are the boss and one of your employees got a call with your voice saying, do this now, I'm authorizing it, what would they do? Most of the time in the current environment, they probably would do whatever the voice told them to do. I know a lot of mine, I'm concerned about that, my employees. AI-powered malware. We now have AI writing new malware. You can just spam it out. You have a good security program on your computer, great. It defeated the first attack. I'm going to try 150 different other kinds of malware because I can generate that in an afternoon. They can just keep trying and automating their attacks to make them better. And of course, automated contextual awareness attacks. That one is coming, where using a large language model and certain kind of promptings, you can see cyber attacks real-time adapting using artificial intelligence to security defenders like myself. So a program adapting to the stuff we use to stop them. We can see that coming. This stuff is here and is only going to get worse. So the question I have for you is now the time to start to manage your risk. And if it is the time, where do you start? Is now the time to manage your risk? And if it is, where on earth do you start? Because if you're like most people, this topic, including myself, by the way, this topic is hugely overwhelming. And it makes you kind of want to bury your head in the sand. But we know that ignoring a threat doesn't make it go away. You need to get in order to make the right decision, you get the facts you need. You need data to defend against this, not FUD, not fear of uncertainty and doubt, not, oh, the AI is coming for me. You need data, you need facts, you need things that you can take and make actionable decisions on, that you can understand and predict and work with. How do you do that? Well, first you need to identify your current, like right now, risk exposure to this kind of threat. Big question I hear a lot from agencies is, can't I just get an insurance policy to manage my risk? I am never going to tell you not to get insurance for this stuff. And I actually wrote an article for the case of why you should get it. And if you scan that QR code, it'll take you there to our blog page, tabernacle.tech/blog, where you can read all about that. But insurance does not pay out the next week when you have a problem, especially in the realm of cyber insurance. If you get breached, you're going to be looking at least a significant window of time, a month, 2 weeks, whatever, probably longer than 2 weeks. I've done this before, and I think it took 3 months. And the one I did when I did a claim, when I worked with someone to help with a claim on this. Again, I am not an insurance professional. I did not a licensed insurance agent. This is me coming at you as a cybersecurity professional, but I've helped with an actual breach where we had to do a claim, and it took 2.5 months to get the claim processed. 2.5 months where the business or organization in question lost over 6 figures from an attacker stealing from their bank account. 2.5 months where the forensics team, because when you file an insurance claim with these kind of guys, they send out a team to investigate called forensics, who did what. You have to talk to a breach coach, which is a law firm that represents the insurance, to figure out what the legal precedent is. And then to add salt to injury, depending on how your policy is written, you might not get the aggregate. And again, not an insurance professional, but I know the case I worked with, it was about 15% of the damages was actually paid out due to how the policy was written. Claims are going up, premiums are rising. the president in the United States just announced an actual official exploration and one of the questions of cybersecurity for the nation over the next 3 years. And one of the actual questions they're asking is, do we need a government backstop this kind of insurance? Because the losses just don't seem to have mitigating factors. So read the article, get a better take on this. But generally, if you get insurance for these kind of things, you still need to manage your risk. They'll actually ask you on some of the applications I filled out, the warranties, did you do a risk assessment? Which is what we're going to talk about. You need to do the cybersecurity risk assessment. You have to actually know what kind of risk you have and how to manage it. And a lot of people, a lot of businesses, most businesses have no idea because it's just not something we've ever really looked at. You need to investigate your current security position, determine how susceptible your business is to the kind of attacks we're talking about, like what kind of impact would output, how much damage is, how likely staff or employees are enabling or furthering the attack. I saw a great meme even today from a cybersecurity colleague of mine, where it's a bunch of guys sitting on a pickup truck and each of the guys on the back of the bed. And each of the guys has like a security tool placed on them, like MFA, security on the computer, network, zero trust, all those fancy buzzwords. And then there's one person that says team member or user. And that person on the back of the truck bed for his grip while the truck is riding is holding the latch of the truck bed that everybody's sitting on. Your team members can bypass whatever security you have. You got to know how susceptible your team is to enabling or furthering these kind of attacks. You also need to see if there's procedural weaknesses in the business that enable attacks. A great example of this is do you have a written, widely distributed policy for your team if someone asks them to pay a bill? How is that processed? If a vendor comes up to you and says, you owe me money, here's the wiring information to your executive assistant or to your accountant that works in-house or whoever is doing that, what does that process look like? How do you make sure you're not going to get tricked? Because we did see a scenario recently where I have a friend who had to deal with this, and this is really sinister. An attacker hacked a vendor, sat inside of there, wait until the vendor sent his customer a real invoice. And then the attacker immediately jumped into action within minutes of that real invoice coming out and sent a follow-up email from the vendor's professional email account, because they had hacked in, saying, if you'd like to pay via ACH, you can do so at this account number here. And of course, the customer paid the invoice at the account number because that was convenient. And it happened within minutes. The only defense against that kind of scenario is an actual policy that outlines, hey, if we're going to change how we pay the vendor, this is our process to make sure we're paying the right person. FDIC, the thing that insures our bank accounts for ACH, is particularly sinister with this kind of attack because FDIC does not cover any kind of wire fraud. That is the professional insurance policy if you have one, and it has to have actual specific coverage. Again, not an insurance professional, just a cybersecurity guy that has had to work with this kind of stuff. And last but not least, you need to identify the most likely at-risk business assets. Is there something that an attacker is going to want if they get into your environment that you need to be aware of? This is a little small, but this is our official process. So we meet with the executive team. We interview about any existing security policies that you have. We look at physical environments. If you have an actual office, we're going to take a look at it and see what all equipment you have. Look at the network. And the network is comprised of not just your physical equipment and the router and all that, but also the SaaS apps you're using. Microsoft 365, Google. Did you know Microsoft's terms of service, if you use Microsoft 365, for example, specifically says if someone uses your username and password to log into their services, they are not liable for any damages whatsoever. That is all on you. In fact, last year they amended their terms of service, or earlier this year, forget exactly when they can say now that if you cause a data breach for Microsoft using your username and password, they can hold you liable. They reserve the right to do that. So we need to look at what kind of applications you're using and how they're secured. We need to look at what kind of data you're hanging on to. Is everything actually going into your platform where you're putting together your various policies? Or if you're a business that does something else, how are you managing data that might be potentially sensitive? If you have anything that makes you unique, your intellectual property. I've got intellectual property. Most businesses do. Something that makes them special. How are you managing that? Is it available publicly on the internet somehow? You'd be surprised how often I find Google Drive stuff just floating on the internet with public links that anybody can get to. We look at the user and systems that they're using and make sure that they're using the latest and greatest and there's nothing that we need to worry about. We look at the dark web. to make sure that there's nothing floating on there that you need to know about. Great example of this. I was on the dark web, because we can look at it, and I saw a post by a cyber criminal that took down a CPA firm or got breached a CPA firm in Cincinnati. As far as I can tell, back in January when this happened, the CPA firm had no idea this had happened. And it literally was just the attacker saying, this CPA firm does not respect security. They stink. Look at all the stuff we stole from them. And they mentioned the CPA firm by name. They mentioned what kind of data they took. They also mentioned what kind of credentials they took. We can look at stuff like that and see if there's anything out there that's happened years past that you need to be aware of, because spoilers, the cyber criminals like to scrape the dark web and find out if someone's already breached you, how they did it, so they can replicate. Team behavior tests. We need to make sure that your team is resilient against things like phishing emails or social engineering. I was at DEF CON 2 weeks ago. DEF CON, for those of you who don't know, is the cybersecurity conference out in Las Vegas, where thousands and thousands of cybersecurity practitioners, both the professional hackers that do like professional security testing and the defenders like me, gather and hang out and trade tips and tricks. And I was in a room where I saw something. I saw a person on a phone call a corporate office, and within a minute and a half convince the other person on the phone line to give up what kind of antivirus they were using, what kind of web browser they were using, what kind of business they were in, how they did their job. A minute and a half is all it took her from the time she called the corporate line to getting someone to give her what she needed to breach that company. We need to make sure that your team is a little skeptical and knows how to see things. I like to call it street knowledge. When we're all done with this process, we present our findings and recommendations in a nice executive report. We have a briefing and a presentation that the executive team, whether it's the ownership or other key team members at your firm, can understand. I don't like to make things technical jargon. This is a risk management strategy. We'll give you a consultation to help you plan your next steps and do a risk management strategy for your company, all in the engagement. If you're interested in starting this process, or if you just want to learn more about what this risk assessment process looks like, there's a QR code in the top left-hand corner and right here in the front of your screen. I've also put in the URL right here, cyber.tabernacle.tech/cyber strategy session. We are giving out today a free half-hour engagement of my time as Chief Security Officer to give you a free cyber strategy session where you can ask questions on what you should do, if anything, at no cost. Again, that's cyber.tabernacle.tech/cyber strategy session. You can also get the QR code in the top left-hand corner at any point to take you there as well. It's also on our website at the webinar link. Thank you so much for taking a moment to listen. Cyber threats are real. They're getting worse day by day. It's going to become, and it has become, a major priority for businesses to manage their cyber risk, because the cyber has bled over into the real. When's the last time you held every penny in your bank account in your hand? You haven't. At least most of you haven't. I haven't. Why? Because only 8% of physical cash is actually printed year by year. It's all ones and zeros in a computer. The cyber can actually impact the real life. There is no more division the way people seem to think sometimes. And to be fair, there are smart people, probably people on this webinar, who have realized that. So take proactive measures to reduce your risk against this kind of threats, you, your business, and your way of life. That's my calling for today. If you have any questions, obviously you've already gotten our free calendar link. It's still in the top left-hand corner, but you can also just reach out to our website, tabernacle.tech. We have a philosophy, which is we never charge for a question. We don't think it's the right thing to do, and people need to feel free to ask questions. So ask us questions. Let us know what your thoughts are. As always, thank you so much for your time. Have a great weekend and stay safe out there.